Remember Karine Jean-Pierre, President Biden's former press secretary, who helped cover for him and mislead the American people on his cognitive decline? Well, she was on The View taking a swipe at the Trump administration for what she calls an assault on free speech. Let's watch.
If you look at the Associated Press, they are the oldest wire in the press briefing room. And you think about journalists, you think about the reason they're in the press briefing room, you think about the reason they're in the pool. It's called the protective pool. There are 13 members of the pool. I'll try not to get too wonky here. And their job is to provide unbiased information to the American people, because the American people deserve that. And when the White House press team decides to step in and override the White House Correspondents Association, who they have the job of doing that, then what we're looking at is state TV. Yep. What we're looking at is what Russia is doing. What we're looking at is what North Korea is doing. And we are doing that. They are attacking the fiber of the freedom of the press. They are destroying it because they want to be covered in a friendly way. Yeah. And look, I was in that position for 2.5 years. It is an exercise, what we did in the press briefing room, what the president did when he took questions from the press. It is an exercise of democracy.
It got heated. KJP and The View company host Alyssa Farah Griffin got into it. Let's watch.
Do you believe that Joe Biden would have won if he had stayed in? And a follow-up to that, do you think Kamala Harris would have had a better shot had she had more time?
So look, I was asked a question. I answered it honestly and how I felt at the moment. I was the one that was going to the podium almost every day after that happened. And it was shocking what I saw. But I also, I can't speculate. Right? I don't know what would have happened. And anybody who says they do, they don't really know. And so I don't want to go to rehatch the past. I don't think that's a good idea. Right now, again, 5-alarm fire, we need to move with strategy, with focus, and the Democratic Party needs to actually answer those questions that I put forth. Who are we and what are we fighting for?
And
how do we meet the moment?
Press secretary, you were also an assistant to the president, so that meant you were able to interact with the campaign off time.
Actually, I could not I had a special kind of role as the press secretary. I did not interact with the campaign.
So you had as a commissioned officer,
I could not.
So you had no insight into the polling that showed he would have lost every swing state?
I did not, because
well, it does matter though.
Okay, here's what's going to happen. Hold on, we're going to take a break, because you see this conversation getting going.
That was incredible. Alyssa Farah Griffin was doing a good job of really trying to dial down it, but we know, KJP, you were around Biden and had to be seeing how he was functioning at this point, and you were clearly misleading people about it, and then Whoopi goes, oop, commercial break.
Well, I have
not good, Whoopi.
Yeah, I have personal experience here. Right after I announced for the presidency, KJP came onto the press podium the week after to mock me about crystal balls and say the president is not afraid of her, to make me sound like a silly person. So the idea that she gives unbiased information and no propaganda is absurd. Also, the rest of the ladies on The View, who routinely throughout the campaign, when I was running in the primary, would speak mockingly, Sunny Hostin absolutely lying about my experience with AIDS patients. Obviously, they were just reading DNC points. That kind of Democrat is one of the big reasons why we lost.
Yes, indeed. And making a clear break with that version of the Democratic Party seems like a no-brainer. You know, at least you could say when Bill Clinton left office, when Barack Obama left office, they were broadly speaking popular. They were popular among Democrats, and you know their approval ratings were higher than Biden and Trump leaving office, certainly. Biden approval rating so low leaving office. Kamala Harris rejected. And I think Kamala Harris did a lot wrong in the course of her campaign, but she did inherit the campaign at the last minute, and she inherited the Biden people, the Biden team, people who were unwilling to criticize the guy who just stopped being their boss 5 seconds ago. Those people need to stop being listened to. They've been but they've moved from the commanding heights of the Democratic Party into media positions. You know, Joy Reid got replaced by Simone Sanders, someone who's even more defensive of Harris and Biden than Joy Reid is, if that's even possible.
What happened here was the DNC, the head elite establishment corporatist wing, which they certainly represent, decided they felt, in their supreme wisdom, not, that Trump was such a danger and such a threat to democracy that they had the role of suppressing democracy in the Democratic Party. If they had not peripheralized, de-amplified, and smeared the president's his opponents, such as myself, and also when you were talking about Kamala Harris inheriting it, we had time. Just as I kept saying, the president should debate me, so should Kamala have. So you're right. You and I agree on this one. These people need to step aside and let the new voices of the Democratic Party be heard. We have them. We have them. But those people suppressed them, kept the lid on, and would do so now if we allow them to.
And we're wrong. And they said that was necessary in order to defeat Trump.
That's the point.
They lost.
Wrong, and even now won't admit it.
Well, and she won't admit that she didn't know about the. But she's like, I don't know what would have happened if Biden remained the nominee. He would have lost by an even greater margin, is what was going to happen.
But there were alternatives, and they made sure that those alternatives that nobody
they didn't consider alternatives. There was at no point in time were they going to do alternatives. I mean, Biden coronated Kamala out the door, said, I'm stepping aside, and by the way, it's going to be Kamala now. Nancy Pelosi said, yep, sounds good. Everybody kicked into high gear and said, yep, and then said, oh, but you could have dissented at some point. Marianne, you could have wandered down there and,
This is interesting. The Republicans are actually, the Republicans have the more elitist policies, but a strangely more egalitarian relationship with their own constituency.
Yes.
The
Finally,
Democrats
that was not always the case, but now
but the Democrats have the more egalitarian policies, but a strangely elitist relationship with its own constituency. The Republicans will look at someone like Vivek Ramaswamy, he's never served in office, and said, you have some good ideas, come on in. The Democratic elite will look at someone like myself as though I had no life. There is no level of expertise except their level of clubbishness and expertise. They see only that as qualified. They think qualified means qualified to perpetuate the machinery that they're already running and losing with. The Democratic Party is going to have to open up the windows, open up the doors. There's some new music. Sometimes I feel like the old-fashioned Democratic Party is intentionally shrinking its base. Let the rest of us in, guys. We'll have a much greater chance of
Republican elites also tried to give people some option other than Trump. They wanted to move away from Trump and said, all right, let's have a competitive process. That Trump won, and because the people, not the elites. The elites didn't shove Trump on the people again.
Right.
The elites tried to say, is there anybody else? Anybody? Ron DeSantis? Anybody? And the people said, we demand Trump again. We demand Trump even more, even harder now, please.
And the press went along with that. Their partners, MSNBC, CNN that had the CNN town halls for all the Republicans, but wouldn't have them for Robby or me, even when our polling numbers were even higher than some of them. Very different than in 2020. So we need to call you guys on it, because hopefully you won't make that same mistake in 2028. Otherwise, as Jefferson would say, tremble for my country.
All right, that does it for us today on Rising. Thanks so much for watching us. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss any content. And for those of you who like to listen while on the go, we're now available anywhere you can find podcasts. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.